welcome everybody to Magical People. We have our very, very special guest this week. Oh, they're all special, but I was fortunate enough to twist Mark Williams' arm to come on my show this week. How are you today, Mark?
I'm great. Thank you, Michael, for having me. Really appreciate it.
Same. Thank you so much. We have a lot to chat about, and how this all started was basically yesterday. I forget why we got in touch, and it turned into instead of a 5 or 10 minute conversation, about a half hour, 20-minute conversation. And I thought, holy cow, we have a lot to talk about. You have so much to share with the magic world generally, because you have, and to say eons worth of experience, I don't know if that's a compliment or if it's an insult to say eons, because I like to think you're very well preserved. But you have what, 40 or more, some odd years in the world of magic?
Yes, that's correct. I'm celebrating 50 years of magic this year. And I started when I was 14. So if you do the math, you can figure out how old I am.
Very good. And what do you love most? I know we get exposed to so many different things in the world of magic. We get exposed to mentalism or mind reading for those lay people out there, close-up magic, which a lot of people can divide up into walk around magic or table to table magic, or one of my personal favorites, which is back in vogue again, is platform magic. But I assume that of all the types of magic you've either done or have been exposed to, is there a favorite?
Yes, I would say that, close-up magic is my forte. I started learning about that when I was about 16, 17 years of age. Prior to that, I was doing like kids' birthday parties and things like that with more sort of parlor type props. But I met a gentleman who showed me a Paul Harris trick, and hopefully some of the audience out there knows who that is. And I was astounded, and I asked, where did you learn that? And it kind of started from there.
Wonderful. Paul Harris is a genius. For those lay people, I don't like to call them muggles. It sounds a bit derogatory, but some people like that term, non-magicians, if you will. Paul Harris, in my opinion, is a genius. And I forget, I think it was Immaculate Connection. It's a linking card routine.
Right.
Was my first exposure to him, because David Copperfield did it on his special, his version of Immaculate Connection. And then I thought, I have to learn this. I was already into magic quite a few years. I was actually a working pro, and I thought, can I work this into my walk around magic? Certainly not stage. And then years later, I see someone on one of those competition shows on TV, which we should chat about and get your feelings about that. Someone did it with jumbo cards, and I thought, how brilliant is that? They've taken a close-up trick, if you will, a close-up illusion, and taken it to either platform or stage level. Let's talk about, if you're okay with that, those competition TV shows. There's Penn and Teller's, Fool Us. I love all these shows personally because it gives me ideas for new tricks and routines. However, there's also Masters of Illusion. It's not strictly a competition show, but I like Dean Cain, believe it or not. I thought he's kind of a good-looking host. And I forget, there was a number of other ones some years ago. How do you feel about, when I say exposing magic, I mean not exposing the secrets, but magic being exposed to a more wide audience, if you will, versus well, the downside. So how do you feel about all this stuff on these shows?
Yeah, I think it's good for magic to be out there on television for people to see and enjoy, being entertained by. And the one thing I kind of dislike about the shows is they do the cuts to the two hosts behind the curtain. They'll cut to the audience. I'd rather just see the magician doing the magic, if you get my meaning.
Yes, exactly. And the other thing too, if I might take that a step further, I don't think we're necessarily revealing anything. it's more convincing if the audience and even we as magicians to watch the illusion straight through without cutaways, because cutaways may afford hanky panky or whatever. So even if a layperson doesn't really know about misdirection or doesn't really know about funny business that goes on behind the scenes, it is way more convincing if they do that all in a one shot or continuous shot, if you will, of the magician doing their thing. And I understand they want to add different angles. They want to add, something more interesting than just, those, I think they're called talking
Right.
heads. I am a talking head right now. So who am I to talk, if you will? But I get that. But yes, it does kind of take away the legitimacy, if you will. I'm going to skip right away to social media, simply because that's a great way for magic to get exposure, not to be exposed, but to get exposure. But at the same time, I take issue with, and you have a very funny term, it's very apt as well. I won't say it, you can say it, for this sort of magic where it's kind of a one shot, boom, they do their thing and it's done. And whatever happened to storytelling, whatever happened to beginning, middle, and ends, and all that sort of thing. So I'd love to hear and have you share with us your feelings about social media and magic, if you will.
Yeah, I think that the term that you're referring to is something that I call hit and run magic, and in a more sort of negative term, I call it guerrilla magic, right? And there's no presentation to any of these videos. It's just the 2 seconds or 3 seconds of the magic trick. I can kind of see why they're doing it, just to, kind of make people, be in awe of what's happening. But for me, I think that a magic trick needs a presentation. It needs to have a story. You want your audience to go on that journey with you. And if you can let them in on something personal about yourself and weave that into your magic, then I think they're going to go along for the ride.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's so much more to the magic of magic. I've just coined that phrase right here and right now, because magic isn't, as you know, magic isn't just necessarily a thing appearing or disappearing or floating or mind reading. There's about a dozen or more different types of magic. It's not just the climax. It's not just what happens, which is shown on social media, on Instagram and possibly Facebook, etc. Certainly Twitter. I was convinced, not Twitter, TikTok. I was convinced by a close college friend of mine to go on TikTok, and I thought, well, I'm not dancing. What's going on here? And I noticed a lot of other big time, if you will, and up and coming magicians on TikTok. But again, it's what you and what I would like to call guerrilla magic. It's like, boom, there, it's done. And it's like, well, it's not just done. That's not real stage magic or real magic. Real magic is everything but the climax, if you will. It's the building up to it. Excuse me. It's the anticipation. It's the story. It's the suspense. It could be some comedy put in, of course, if you're so bent in that way. But what happens at the end is simply what happens at the end. And it does bother me a little bit that they kind of rush to it. And I'm sure you can as well. We can cite a million examples on social media where they do an effect for maybe 3 seconds or 2 seconds or 5 seconds at most. And that's it. But I know for a fact, and I'm sure you do as well, some of these effects can be whole 10-minute routines,
Mm.
and not just padding in patter, if you will, not just, getting assistance up and filling time that way and that sort of thing. But a true magi, a true magician, if you will, sees now I'm going to get a bit corny, and I don't mean to, the sacredness of it, the theatricity, if that's a true word, of it. And for me, it's all about that. And I'm hoping, I mean, there's certainly a lot of other great magicians out there already, young guys already working as pros, but I worry a little bit about the younger ones that just hit and run, so to speak. Because magic can be a thing, is a thing of beauty. It's like that blooming rose, or that blooming, I just saw Johnny Gone's not floating, blooming orange bush the
Oh,
other
right.
day.
Yeah.
It's not new, but he just posted that on social media. And this is a true artist, and he's more than just an artist. He knows literally the ins and outs, without giving stuff away, of some of these old time illusions and the sacredness that they should be presented with. What are your feelings about all of that? About those, I like to think of them as historians as well as builders, as those who reconstruct. I don't know if that's a proper term or not, but they kind of do over, if you will, and very faithfully in many instances, those illusions from 1800s. I just love those. What are your feelings on them?
Yeah, they're fantastic, and I think you know as well as I do that we stand on the shoulders of the giants that came before us, the masters, who have taken this art from the olden days to where it is today. And I throughout my entire life being a magician, I've got to see some of the greatest performers of all time in their prime, doing their best magic ever. And I feel so blessed to have been inspired by a lot of these magicians. And, I carry that with me today. So the people that came before us are certainly important.
Absolutely. Excuse me. And I agree 1,000% on your term, and I've used it as well. Building on the being on the shoulder of giants, if you will. My generation, which isn't that far off from your generation, um, uh, some of us have been fortunate or blessed enough as well to see some of the current day masters,
Hmm.
and it's all sort of relative, and there's always something to be learned about theatrics, about staging. That's always fascinated me, but I do have a bit of a background. I was theatrically trained in movement and all that sort of thing relatively early enough to not do too much damage on stage. However, I'm always looking when I'm watching a magic show, a professional magic show, or even some of those Penn and Teller type of shows and all of those showcase shows, if you will. I'm always watching how they've staged it. And is it actually the magician who staged it, who took the time, hopefully, or is it the producers of the shows? I don't think it matters that much as long as the final product looks good.
Right.
And for what it all is, a lot of those do look good. A lot of them, thankfully, are staged well, either by the magician or the production of the TV shows. So that excites me. That gives me some hope, because we're putting into, if you will, vulnerable eyes, the eyes of young aspiring magicians and even lay audiences, magic coming up to a certain level. And I'll never forget, I'm going to share this briefly with you. And I'd love to hear some of the masters you've seen over the years as well. But David Copperfield, I saw him live, probably in the 80s or 90s, late 80s or 90s. I also saw Doug Henning. But what intrigued me, and I wasn't expecting anything because I'd seen Doug Henning first, and he came out on a bare stage and did his stuff, and that was all well and fine. He has his place in magic history, and I'm sure has influenced a lot of magicians. But Copperfield's live stage show was exactly like watching him on TV. He had the lighting, he had the smoke, he had all of that. And it was sort of like watching him on a TV screen, but there he was. I was only about 8 or 12 rows back, which for the size of the theater was pretty good. But that really had an impact on me. and I suspect on a lot of other magicians as well. Would you like to share some of the magicians and perhaps their influence or impact on you that you may have seen?
Yeah, I first started seeing television shows by Doug Henning early on, and then of course David Copperfield, and I got to see David a few times live where I used to live. Fantastic. And at one point, I think I was about 28 years of age, I became a member of the Academy of Magical Arts. And so when I would go up to the Magic Castle, I would see just about everybody there. Lance Burton, Blackstone Jr. I was fortunate enough to meet Di Vernon before he passed. Guys like Shamata, Max Maven. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But you know, every one of them knew their craft so well, and the theatrics behind it, and you know, just studying their acts, you know, can do a lot for your own. Right? You're not actually taking or stealing something from them, but you're taking away ideas that could work for you and lessons learned.
Absolutely. And I know there's been recent debate, if you will, on stealing other people's shows or acts or whatever. You're not stealing a person's act if you're just doing their tricks or doing their tricks your way. But I'm aware of a lot of young magicians, both past and present. I'm as guilty of the same sort of thing, of perhaps copying a style. I was sort of, for a brief while, the poor man's David Copperfield back in the late 80s to mid 90s almost. And I had previous to that my own style. It was kind of a medieval style based on my TV show, Magic Mike's Castle. And I already had my own costume, and I was known for that locally and nearby. But as soon as I saw Copperfield and there was that impact, I started dressing like his stage persona. And right away, I believe I had less success. I had less applause, even though I might have been doing the same effects as I had been doing for many years. I switched to larger ones. However, there's nothing wrong with being influenced. The energy of a Copperfield or a Blackstone or even Senior. A lot of people today don't talk about Harry Blackstone Senior, who, in my opinion, him and Mandrake Senior did the best dancing handkerchief. You know, that's all debatable.
Yeah.
We can talk about that if you want, but everybody has their own merits as far as presentation is concerned. And there's nothing wrong with not stealing the presentations and even doing effects, but do it your way. I think it's really important that an up and coming performer really finds who they are and hopefully projects that on stage, not being influenced by, not that there's anything wrong with David Blaine or any of the younger guys. I like Franz Harari. I still like schlepping around those boxes and all that sort of thing. But just simply schlepping around boxes and doing big illusions doesn't make you a magician. It's about the staging, isn't it? It's about the music. Music, oh my goodness, Disney knew where it was at as far as music was concerned, and his films in general, because at the beginning it was punchy and you went on a roller coaster ride, if you will, of emotions. And really, as magicians, as performance artists, if you will, isn't that our job, to perhaps move people? I mean, it sounds grand, but it sure is better than bam, there, this thing has disappeared. How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel the same way, Michael. And as you were talking about being influenced by certain performers, I think there could be like a slight drawback if you're learning from a video and DVD, because it's like the same performer that you're learning from, and you kind of take on some of their personalities sometimes, and you, as you say, you might be aping them in a way or copying them in a way. And I remember, I won't name the performer, but I remember watching one DVD quite a bit. And for some odd reason, after watching it, I had this insatiable need to go out into the desert and do a kabuki dance. So I don't know where that came from, but it's true.
I know who you're talking
Uh,
about. That's so funny.
so, but at any rate, yeah, I think their lessons can be learned from just about anywhere. Real life experiences. If you have real life experiences in whatever you did, I always had a stable job and did magic on the side as paid gigs. And so experiences that I had through my life, the work, the types of work that I did throughout my life, I would interject those into my magic act. And some were funny and some were not. Can I give you a for instance on one?
I'm hoping you will.
Well, this goes back quite a few years, but I was doing a birthday party, and it was a dual birthday party for a 9-year-old girl and her 90-year-old grandmother who shared a birthday. And you're aware of a trick by Tenyo called "What's Next?"
Yes, absolutely.
It's a card with spots that appear and disappear seemingly at will.
Yes.
First, for some reason, I was turning the card a little too quickly, and one of the spots ejected off of the card.
Oh.
And landed in their fish tank.
Wow.
So as magicians, you don't expect things like that to happen. But fortunately, I was quick enough to just look over at the fish tank and go, "Oh, it's Finding Nemo." And I left it there. I left it there for the entire show. And once the show was over, then I got the errant spot back. And you just keep going. The lesson is you keep going. No matter what happens, you keep going.
Absolutely.
Don't just stop and let these types of things defeat you. My advice would be prepared for anything.
Absolutely. And how many times as magicians have we had things go wrong, either in an obvious fashion or in ways many times audiences don't know that something has gone wrong because they don't really know the trick. They don't know what's going to happen. It's different if you're playing a song and you hit a wrong note or chord or whatever, and it's like, oh, that doesn't sound right, or that's not how the song goes, unless it's your own. But with magic, we do have a bit of an advantage in that our audiences don't know really what to anticipate or expect. I had a horror story very, very briefly. I can't say all of it because our audiences aren't all magicians out there. But let's just say we refer to this as a TT. And
Right.
It was my first close-up walk-around restaurant gig. And my opener was the vanishing handkerchief. Boom. Because it's quick and whatever, and it gives me a chance to start to interact with the audience or the table that I'm at. And the thing went flying, the thing that operates the whole effect, and just rolled onto the floor, kind of near the table. And it's like, what incarnation do you do? Yes, I said, what incarnation, Mark? What do you do? And I merely snatched it up quickly, went on to the next effect, and hoped that people didn't understand what that was or what went on. But as magicians, we'd be horrified. We'd be like, oh my goodness, the trick is exposed, or I can't go on, I can't do this, etc., etc. Another horror story was I was doing sponge balls. It was at the same restaurant, but an affair. It was, believe it or not, a social media thing. It was some TV stations down there, some local celebs, and one guy took my sponge balls and shoved them into his mouth.
Wow.
And he had his date. We became good friends afterwards. He was the local weatherman and would tend to enjoy his evening a little much, and was always out to impress whatever date he had with him, who was usually a gorgeous gal. In any case, I'm doing my sponge ball routines. It might have been an effect called clones that I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
And before the end result of clones, he grabbed one of my clones, I think, or maybe both of them, shoved them into his mouth. And I was like, oh dear, what do I do now? And I made him be the hero. He spat them out. I cleaned them off. I made a big joke of all of this, and somehow carried on. And they changed into. I don't want to give the effect away or the
Right.
climax, but
Yeah.
I was able to carry off the
Nice.
ending quite well. But like you say, you have to just carry on. You can't be fear based. You can't kind of go, oh my God. But that also comes with experience. That also comes with doing hundreds of shows a year. I was very blessed. I was very fortunate to be living in a city that loved magic. So on average, I did 200, 250 shows a year for about 10 years. And
Right.
that's the only way really to hone your craft. If you're a beginner, it's great to perform for your parents. It's great to perform for your girlfriend or boyfriend or a mirror. Mirrors are kind of good for angles, but I find even then I don't have much of a use for mirrors unless I just want a straight on view. I always work 360. And if my criteria is if I can't work surrounded, I won't use that effect. But I have bent effects. I have modified effects so that they do work 360. How are your feelings on this? Let's say you're an aspiring magician, male or female. There's a lot of great young female magicians nowadays too, and grown up female magicians on stage as well. They're amazing. Where do they practice? What if they can't get hundreds of shows a year? What if they get maybe a handful throughout the whole year? What do you do? How do they get experience? How do they overcome butterflies and fear?
Yeah. My first answer to that would be to take drama classes, and that's what I did. In order to overcome stage fright, I took several drama classes in high school. Was in several plays, and so I learned stagecraft from there. When you're starting out, of course, you're going to be doing magic for your family and your friends, and at some point, you have to start to venture out. Maybe you do like a charity event, right? And perhaps you'll charge a little amount, or maybe you won't charge anything at all, just to get some exposure out there, get your name out there. And once your name's out there, like in the media, then other people will want to have you at their functions as well. So I would suggest that, you know, first take drama classes, get, yourself situated so that you're not going to be afraid in front of people, and then go on to do some charity events. And like I said, get your name out there.
Absolutely. The more experience you get, the better. And you can only get better and better. I'm sure you hopefully agree with me on this. The older you get, the better you get. There's no
Yeah.
point where you don't learn something by performing in front of a live audience. Some of my best lines I got from what kids shouted out. Kids can be brilliant. And I did a lot of kid shows. That's probably what I was known for back out east, and the TV show as well was performing for kids. I was a family, if you will, magician, family-based magician, if you will. And kids are brilliant. Kids are geniuses. And if their lines worked, if I got a laugh from the audience from what kids would shout out occasionally, and they were always witty. I would actually use those lines in my next show. If I had like 4 lined up that day at different places and I had to schlep around, I'd remember that. So it's not just about what you're doing, it's also how your audience is reacting. I want to take a brief pause and I want to share with our audience out there a clip you shared with me. And this is it fair to call your alter ego?
Yes, I would say it is.
Okay, very well. We'll go to that clip and we'll be back.
Yo, I am the mind weak, and although I am weak of mind, I am strong of stature. Maybe not. At any rate, I hate magic tricks. That's why I, the mind weak, do demonstrations. Now, demonstrations should not be attempted by anyone, at any time, anywhere. What I hate more than magic tricks is somebody putting their name onto one of my playing cards. just like that. I really dislike that a lot. And then they place their card back in the deck, like this. See? And then it goes in, just like so. Then the spectator wants me to find their card in some stupid way. Are you kidding me? Forget about it. I am the mind weak. You know what I do? I just bring their card right back up to the top of the deck, like that. I know, it's so simple. And then I put their card back inside the deck, just like that, and look them straight in the eye and say, if you want your card to come back to the top, you bring it yourself. I am the mind weak, and you're not. Forget about it.
That was so cool. And I don't know if any of you out there recognized my guest, but that's your alter ego, isn't it, Mark?
It is, and I have to say, Michael, that guy that we just saw, he needs a shrink. He really, he's kind of nutty, that one.
So where did the idea for the, I mean, I know, I hope some of our viewing and listening audience out there knows as well, but please share with us the beginnings, if you will, of this character, your influences, etc.
Yeah, I can't share the true story because it's not PC, but I'll try to make it as best I can. The idea started back in 2009 when I talked to another fellow magician at Magic Live. Something was said in a conversation, and I kind of, it sort of stuck in my mind. And then later in 2012, there was a contest on a forum for video contest, and the theme was performing an homage to your favorite magician. Now, although a gentleman here in Las Vegas calls himself Mind Freak, he wasn't actually my favorite magician, but I got this crazy idea. Could I win a contest, a video contest, without really doing a lot of magic and more or so presentation? Could I win it by presentation alone? And if I could, how would I do that? And so the Mind Week character was, brought back to life in 2012. And of course, after that one video, it did win the contest. I got a trophy for winning the contest with that video. And then he went away again until about last year, 2021, when I reestablished the character as I look now. Of course, back in 2012, I was much handsomer looking back then. But so it's really an antithesis of who I am as a person. We've talked about this before. Several people know that I am ex-law enforcement from back in the day. I retired from the Postal Service here in the United States. I did that for 29 years. But when I was a deputy sheriff, I did that for 3. So it's a combination of everything that I've done in my life. It's a poking of fun at magic in general. It's a poking of fun at myself, and it's also a poking of fun of our kind friend, Mind Freak.
Yes, very, very good. But the first time I saw it was at one of Anthony Darkstone's galas. Anthony Darkstone, for those, maybe there's a couple of people out there don't know, he's the president of the International Assembly of the Society of American Magicians, of which we're members. I'm the Canadian envoy. And by the way, if some of you want to see more of Mind Week, we've got a gala show coming up in June. And any of the gala shows, whether it's the upcoming one or those watching this post, will also probably be able to enjoy you during these gala shows as well. Some of the past ones, and certainly an upcoming one. And anybody watching this on social media, either my Instagram, Facebook, etc., Twitter, I'll post a link, and then you can see this very interesting wizard. And I want to go on a little bit about what we just saw because of the surprise ending. And that did catch me off guard. That gave me a punch in a good way. And I thought, wow. So because as a magician, I'm watching everyone's routines, and I'm watching their pacing, and I'm watching the behind the scenes stuff, even though it's completely invisible, which all of that was, I'm sure your behind the scenes stuff was flawless. Um, it surprised me, and it will surprise other magicians as well, because I don't know what they'll anticipate, but I didn't anticipate that ending at all, which makes me appreciate the effect and the routining even more, because all I'm going to say is you had to do more work, more stuff than meets the eye, so to speak. So without giving anything away, I hope you get my drift, and I hope you realize how much I appreciate what went being kind of behind that illusion. So it's not just an entertaining character, which is important. I think everyone can learn from this, up and comers as well as pros, but the effect, because one of the things I was pleasantly surprised with when watching your character, Mark, not your character, Mark, but your character, comma, Mark, was he does surprisingly good magic. I'm sure, and I know you do, but you wouldn't think that a character, a parody, if you will, you'd think it would be a parody of a magic illusion or a magic trick or a takeoff, if you will. But it's good. Every effect I've seen you do as that character, it's had a punch. It's had a, oh, dang, I said dang, you fooled me. And not that I know so much, but I'm not a beginner. And, if you could fool a magician, and it's still my goal to do that, I'm just happy enough to do magic. But
Right.
if you can fool another magician with that twist, or with that surprise ending, or they're trying to figure it out, and it's like, there's no way because he did this and this and that, then I think you're at a certain level. And with all due respect, I feel and I'm thankful for who you are, Mark Williams, and what you do, because you
Right.
not only entertain, but you also fool. And I don't mean to gush so much. I think I've embarrassed
Yes.
myself, let alone you. However, what a great example for others out there. Entertain, don't you agree?
I agree. The entertainment value is the most important thing. And from the video that we just watched, um, the character Mind Week is built that way. You think when you start to watch him that he's going to fail miserably, right? And then by the end, when the magic actually works, he turns out to be a hero. Um, and one of my friends said it best when he watched one of the videos. He said, Mind Week is a guy that kind of gets in his own way, right? And the other thing is that he this guy likes it so much is because, like, here's an older gentleman, myself, kind of portraying a younger sort of teenage uh, character, and so that's why he kind of gets in the way of himself, and your expectations are lower than the normal, and so when the magic happens, you're pleasantly surprised. You're like, whoa, wow, what happened then?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I always like magic with a punch, with a surprise ending, because a lot of magic can be very predictable. And I also love the fact, magicians, we call that technique, if that's fair to say, the magician in trouble syndrome. It works especially well for kids' magic. And I used that to no end, because you kind of gain the kids' sympathy, and the adults even think, well, what's going on here? The trick isn't going to work. And then you give them a 2 or 3 punch kind of ending. And it's like, whoa, not only did it work, but this and this happened. So I love the fact that it's an adult magic trick, not adult in the way of X-rated, but that's not necessarily a kid's trick, but kids would love it as well because of the character, and it works great for adults as well. So I hope we can look forward to more appearances by Mind Week.
Yeah, I think the next gala show in June 11th, I believe. There's going to be appearance from Mind Week there, and also there's some in jokes, obviously in the videos that I've put in there, especially for magicians. And one of them, if you rewatch that video that we just saw, uh, my initials, Mark Williams, are on my T-shirt, and those initials happen to match Mind Week's. The other in joke on my shirt is you'll see the pips are arranged in a certain order that magicians would recognize,
Yes, yes,
and
indeed.
and so that's there specifically for them. And the other thing is I wear the handcuffs around my neck, not because Mind Freak did it, but because of my former law enforcement days. And the handcuffs around my neck mean something
Absolutely.
different to me.
Absolutely. I thought that was genius. I really did. And it looks like our time is running short. I'm sure hoping, will you come back again in the future for us?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. I'd love to. I had a blast. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much. I had a blast as well. And I want to thank as well all of you out there who took the time to watch this. And welcome everybody to Magical People. I'm excited to present our guest this week. It's an old high school chum of mine, Mel Noodelman, and his photographs. It sounds like a dance troupe, but it's not. Welcome to the show, Mel. How are you?
I'm great, thanks, Michael. It's great to be here with you and catch up after all these years.
I know, it's so cool. I was very, very excited, and it felt really good when you contacted me the other week. And it's like, wow, here's a guy that I admired. You probably didn't know that, who I admired in high school. And after all these years, I'm going to age myself. I'm going to admit we
But you're going to
graduated.
age me if you age yourself.
Yeah, but think the last time, well, I'll just say we graduated in 74. We're the class of 74, Northmount High School, Montreal. And I didn't hear a lot, not only of you, but a few other people I did hear of and from, and that was wonderful. And you always struck me as a person who was into photography and who was very meticulous in his work. You were involved. You were our annual, our 74 annual. And what I'm going to do as I speak is there'll be photos coming up showing maybe our cover and various other things. And you might remember, I think it was a goldenrod cover or yellow for
It
lay
was
people.
yellowish, yeah.
And I don't know if you want me to,
With your illustration was the front cover.
and you kindly asked me to illustrate the annual, and really it was all your ideas, which I thought were brilliant and fun. I'm not just saying that to be nice. I have nothing to gain by it, but it took a whole lot of pressure off of me to have direction, which I apparently still require even in the magic world. However, so that was greatly appreciated. And I don't know, you can tell me now if you want me in the course of this in the next few seconds to pop up a couple of pictures of yourself. If you don't feel comfortable, that's fine. You were a good looking guy. I thought you were better looking than me any day. But if I have to go ahead, I think there's a picture of you like sitting back with your feet up on the chair
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
We
all
were
that. Is that okay?
we didn't take any serious. I mean, as you remember, we turned our yearbook into a Monty Python-esque farce, and it was appreciated by all the teachers and none of the students
I don't know why. I don't know
because
why.
everybody wants it to be a nice memory, and we were so into Monty Python that we were just anarchists. What can I say?
I love it. I love it. So, in the course of time, we all live, we have our careers and all that sort of thing. But I discovered, thanks to you, you were kind enough to share with me some photographs, not a ton of photographs, but we will we'll call up as we get a little bit more specific, some of your photographs. And I'm going to cheat for those at home. I've got in front of me 6 files of your photos. And one is abstracts, one is macro, one is nature, one is people, one is places, and one are still photographs. And um, you know which ones I'm excited about because you breathe life into them. However, it's up to you to start with whichever ones you'd like.
Oh my, that's tough.
What a feeling of
Um,
power, eh?
which ones do I like? I'm just looking at in those folders that you showed. How
Mhm.
about we start here with Chic of Manhattan?
Oh, so that's people, right?
People, yeah.
Ah, that's one of my favorite ones. We did cheat last week and we spoke and went through some of these. And I'm just going to go right there. I love this photo. Maybe give us a bit of background.
I was we were visiting my daughter-in-law in New York City, Manhattan, and I went out for a walk in the early morning, and I was just walking by a subway station near her apartment, and this, I guess you could call him a street person, he saw my camera and he glommed onto me and said, "You got to take my picture," and started posing for me impromptu
I love
on the
it.
street outside the subway station in a construction zone. So I took a couple shots and he would come running over and take a look in the back of my camera to see what it was. And I said, "Okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that." And he went back and forth doing all these poses. And it was like I was working with a model on the street, except it was all impromptu and unpaid. And he was a terrific subject and an interesting fellow, very, very entertaining.
I love it. I love it. Now you have a few from China, you have a few from Israel. Where do you want to go?
Um, either one's fine.
Let's just kind of go sort of in order. Let's do the Kangzhou one, the China one with the man in front of what looks like a ton of bricks.
Okay, let me
That
find
would
that.
be the first one in the people file.
Right. Okay. Oh, you like that one?
Yeah,
Not one of my favorites.
I love it. It's very tactile and the
Yeah.
contrast of materials. Some people will get that out there that are watching. Others will go, "Oh, what a nice composition." Others will go, "Oh, the lighting's kind of interesting." But I want your perspective because it is one of my favorites.
I was lucky enough to go to China on business, and we were doing some work for this company that was working with the government to bring modern convenience stores to the rural villages across China. So essentially, um, the company arranged for me to have a tour of some of these rural villages and see the real China. You know, not the Shanghai and the Beijing, but the rural peasant villages. And it was absolutely fascinating. We got to this, I think it's called Guangzhou or
Mhm.
Sangju, something like that. Um, unfortunately, it was obviously a very poor village.
Yes.
The streets weren't paved. They'd had a lot of rain that week, and the streets were just mud and puddles. And then there was this modern convenience store plunked down right in the middle with a concrete um, uh, front yard, basically. And that was it. That was the only modern thing in the entire village. And I just ended up running around in the mud with my
Mm.
camera, taking pictures of all of the people in the street. It was market day and it was a sunny day.
Let's
And
actually go
despite
to, we're going to go to Market Day. That's if you scroll down, that's one of the photos, and there's a few people in the picture, and you can see, I think it's lettuce. I can't really tell, but it's
yes,
obviously Market Day
lettuce.
there.
I
Yep.
think it was lettuce of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, everyone had a huge smile on their face. They were just enjoying the nice weather after the rain. And I mean, you can see in the pictures, there's bricks and stuff all over the place. It's filthy. They're dressed in old beaten up clothes and so on. Half of them are smoking, and but they've all got these irrepressible smiles on their faces. Everyone was just out enjoying market day.
Absolutely. There's a wonderful picture of a lady, I believe it is, in front of a cart. It's
Yep.
something, it's a wheeled thing. And what great angles and composition there. Um, uh, did you want to speak about this person? Do you have any comments?
She was just one of dozens and dozens of interesting people, and there
Mhm.
was no communication beyond holding up my camera and asking with my head, can I take a picture, and everybody was happy to pose. I
Yeah,
don't think they'd seen a Caucasian necessarily in their lives,
yeah.
so I was a real oddity in the village.
Huh. What
And
kind of
the,
camera? Sorry to interrupt. What kind of camera were you using, Mel?
I think that was my first Nikon digital camera, which was
Oh,
only an entry level recreational one. And I've since, traded up and traded up. So that was the first digital camera I had,
very cool.
Nikon D70S,
Very cool. We're going to
which is dating
switch
me.
to different parts of the world. We're going to go from China to Israel, something that's near and dear to both of us because of our backgrounds. And right now, I see three photos. I don't know if there's more, but I see kid in Jerusalem, kids in Jerusalem, and kids on the rock, which sounds like a kind of a drink, but it's not. And which one let's just go in order. Kid in Jerusalem. He
Mhm.
seems to be kind of warning you. What is he doing there?
We were, I went to Israel sort of under false pretenses. My wife at the time was working for this magazine called Lux, which was a struggling magazine that wasn't properly financed. So they had arranged to do the special edition to support the Jerusalem Foundation. And because the finances were weak, they couldn't book a photographer and a copywriter ahead of time. It came down to the last minute, and at the last minute, nobody was available.
Mm,
So they turned to me because they knew I could write and I was into photography. And I became the photojournalist for the magazine.
ah,
And I pretended to be a photojournalist as I went to Israel. And one of the sites they took us to, because the Jerusalem Foundation does all kinds of good work to try and bring the Arab and Israeli populations together and build peace. So this school was half and half Arab and Israeli, and the kids were just wonderful. The teachers were wonderful. Everything was lovely. But as we were going into the school, there were some kids playing in at the yard outside the school, and I stopped to take a few pics. And they were so security conscious that this little boy, saw me with the camera, and he said, "No, that's not supposed to happen." And he
mm,
comes charging over,
mm.
yelling at me, "No, no, 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 you can't do this." And I explained who I was and who I was with, and it's like, "Oh, okay." Well, all of a sudden it went from "you're the enemy" to "take my
Yeah.
picture, take my picture."
And there we see now kids in Jerusalem. So
Yeah,
they're a little bit more welcoming and friendly. And you've got the
yeah,
rabbit ears or something behind the kid. That's so
yeah.
cute. Very
The
cute.
Kids on the Rock is actually not Jerusalem. That's at the beaches here in Toronto.
Oh, TO.
Mhm.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, they don't really look like Israeli kids. It's a great pick anyway. In the Shade, just grabbed my eye for many, many reasons. What's the story briefly around that?
Around which one?
In the Shade.
In the Shade.
Yeah, there's a fellow sitting, and it looks like a
Oh,
straw
In the
hat.
Shade.
Yeah.
That's Kensington Market in
Ah,
Toronto,
yeah.
downtown Toronto. Um, it's a funky area where there's a combination of street life. So there's homeless and poor hanging out on the street, some looking for money, a lot of them just vending juices or whatever they have in little stalls around. And so it's a very funky and interesting place to hang out. And this guy was just sitting under an awning in front of a mural that had been painted on the brick wall in the shade with his drink. And I looked at him and went, I got to take this guy. It's just such a wonderful look. And he really just caught my eye. And I said, this is something that needs to be preserved.
Very cool. I scrolled up a bit to hang in Kensington. There's three fellows there. And what an interesting, for me, it's an interesting character study. Any comments about that?
That the fresh fruit juice vendors?
We can go up to that one as well. That's really cool as well. Where was that taken?
That was also Kensington Market.
Oh, okay.
And these guys were selling fresh juice.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my camera and they gladly posed for me. And we got to talking a little bit. And they were very fun and interesting and to chat with and very photogenic in my mind. So I got a few good pics of them.
Very cool. I'll just be calling up pictures in the final result. We've got chilling in Kensington, cool drink in Kensington. So people will at least be able to appreciate the scope of these photos and the depth and color as well. I'd love to. There's one. It's an interesting fellow with a hat. I got your bottle. I got your bottle. And there's another one as well. Ire. Again, what an interesting character study that is.
I'm looking for I got your bottle.
I've moved on because I realized, it's just an interesting shot.
Hmm.
Now I've moved to Ire, which is actually right beneath I got your bottle.
And what is it?
It looks like Ire, IRE. It's fellow, black fellow with dreads and neat beads and a great smile. I would
Is
love to
this
have
people?
illustrated
Under
this.
people?
Pardon me?
Is this under people? I don't see
Yep,
it.
yeah, it's people. Um, he was
Oh,
probably,
Irie. Yes.
yep,
Okay, I got it.
Irie. Ah, not Ire, Irie. Okay.
Irie, that's Jamaican. Irie.
Ah, I did not know that.
He
Okay.
was one of the juice guys, and
Ah,
uh, they were just so much fun to talk to. I mean, I just was shooting them, and we had a great time together for about 10, 15 minutes. And
awesome.
the juice was delicious, by the way.
Ah, here's Righteous, also, I believe, in Kensington Market. Ire, it's a cool guy with shades. And
That's one of my favorite shots, actually.
I love it. I love the composition, the colors. I
He
would love
matched the
to.
wall behind them. It was so insane. The
Ah,
same color combinations and just such a great look. I mean, I can't take credit really for I'm just recording what was in front of me, and they were such interesting and amazing people that you don't need much talent. I could have taken it with an Instamatic, a Kodak, if you remember
I
the
hear
old
you.
Kodak Instamatic. It would have come out just as good, probably.
I hear you. Kensington Market has come such a long way. The last time I was in TO altogether, well, it wasn't the last time, but one of the times was in 81. And Kensington Market and TO was very much the way the TV show King of Kensington looked. It was a great big market, streets with all kinds of neat things going on, but it didn't seem to have the same kind of color that you've managed to get in these pictures, unless I was blind and missed stuff. So they've really come a long way. Let's see, where would you like to go now? Macro is beautiful. I'm just going to run through these very, because there's only 5 pictures of your macro shots.
So far.
And yes, of course. And does anyone speak to you in particular?
Actually, the macros are all just pretty much flower shots at the moment.
Okay.
Nothing too special.
I like thistles. That's very interesting.
That's a little more interesting. It's just a thistle bush, but I managed to get. I think I took that at dusk and used a flash, so we got a black background, which was just happenstance, and given the time of day. So there's a nice contrast. The close-up stands out very nicely against the black background.
Beautiful.
But that was
Beautiful.
just in the park across the street from my apartment.
Very cool. I've switched over to nature, and thus far there's 2, 4, 6, 7 pictures. And right now, when people are actually watching this, they'll see them kind of go by in succession. I don't know if there's one that stands out. Personally, I love Ice Storm and I love Ice Tree. Did you want to comment on those?
That was also across the street. I think 2013.
Yes.
We had a big ice storm, and there were trees down everywhere in the park. You couldn't even walk the paved trails because every 100 feet or so there was another tree down. And everything was just coated in ice, and the sun was lighting up the ice on the trees. It was just stunning. It was just stunning. So I took quite a number of pictures that day, and it was just a delight.
Very cool. I've switched now to places. There's only one picture right now there, and it's a Chinese temple. Where is this Chinese temple?
That is outside an entrance to a tourist area in the Great Wall.
Oh, so it's actually on location. You're actually there. This isn't Chinatown in Toronto.
No, that's China.
Yes, yes. Something
And
near in here.
A couple of young women
Mhm.
ended up taking me on the tour of the Great Wall.
Ah,
And it was a fascinating afternoon. And it was just so picturesque, beautiful sunny day. And we climbed and climbed for an hour or two. It was just very busy. It was very popular it was mostly Chinese people there, very few tourists. I don't even know if I saw another Caucasian the whole day.
interesting. Now I've switched to abstracts because I'm not just saying this to be nice, I simply love them. And we can actually, I see after the ice storm, which is interesting. Wow. Did you want to talk briefly? There's these wonderful icicles sort of hanging from bench. And then there's the trees in front of them. But did you want to comment on that one?
Well, that was the same ice storm.
Yeah.
And that was one of the park benches up near the sidewalk. And it was just totally coated and the icicles hanging down, and it just appealed to me. I thought it was a cool look, and I grabbed the shot.
Beautiful. I'm going over to Campfire, also under abstracts. You have 2 under abstracts of Campfire. And that I can see the movement in it. It's for me as a magician, as a visual artist, a graphic designer, and a hobbyist photographer. I love these campfire sparks. They're just gorgeous. Is there any story behind them?
We were just up in Muskoka, and it was night. We had a bonfire going, and it was sparking a lot. And I had my camera with me, and I just wanted to see if I could somehow manage to capture all the sparks rising up. So I was playing around and taking long exposure shots handheld. So I knew they weren't going to be sharp, but I just wanted to capture the feeling.
Yes.
And I have a whole series. They came out, this brilliant, brilliant red of the spark, and you see the trails all the way up with the long exposure. And it's just the patterns were random and beautiful.
Oh,
So I've got, I think, a couple dozen of these, and I've just selected a couple or two or three that I'll put on my website when I finally finish working on it.
they're gorgeous. Now there's one, I don't want to give away what it is. Um, because I had no clue, but they look like orange or red, a couple of spirals going here and going there. And if a person would just look at it, if as I'm calling it up on the screen right now, people wouldn't know what that is. I'm assuming you know what I'm referring to.
Yes, I
And
do.
now we can
And I
share
now I
that.
don't know how I'm going to possibly talk about it without saying what they are.
Okay, so let's clue people in because I had no clue. I thought, wow, this is almost psychedelic. I don't know how to describe it, but let's give it away now. These are,
A couple of chairs at the Science Museum in Jerusalem, just outside Jerusalem, I believe. This was part of the Jerusalem Foundation photojournalism mission.
ah,
And we were being shown around by our host from the Jerusalem Foundation. They took us to this museum, and it was late in the afternoon. And we're starting the tour. And as we're walking in, we're passing the cafeteria, which was empty. And the sun was at the perfect point where it's golden and glowing. Before it was about to set, it was the golden hour. And I saw these chairs lit by the sun, and I went, wow, I can do something really evocative and different. And I completely lost the tour and was rearranging chairs and trying different positions to see if I could get an abstract shot with just shapes that didn't explain what you were really looking at, but just had a bit of a flow to it.
yes.
And so 20 minutes arranging chairs and shooting them at different angles. And I finally got the shot I wanted, which was this one. And then I had to run and try and find the group. I went upstairs, and I was catching up to them, and I'm overlooking the cafeteria from the second floor and
Ah,
started shooting the chairs again from an aerial perspective
wow,
because they were scattered around and they made a pattern.
so cool.
So let's just say that the delegation ripped me about Mel and his chairs for the rest of the trip.
No doubt, no doubt. I just have to, I was going to skip over these because of time, but I want to do this. Enoki mushrooms. Look how gorgeous that is. It doesn't look real. It looks like an oil painting or some kind of thing. Is there a story behind this?
Well, I had never really gotten familiar with enoki mushrooms, and I was in the grocery store and I saw them and I said, those are cool. So I bought a package, and then I really liked the look of it. So I set up a little tabletop studio and put on my lights and all the paraphernalia. And I played around shooting them. And then I took the shots where they looked like what they were, more mushroomy, and just played with it a little bit in Photoshop. I have to say, I don't know how to use Photoshop very well, so my skills are very limiting, but I managed to play around a little bit with the colors and the color saturation and the color hues. and got this look that I ended up putting.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I want to make an observation here, if you will, that photographers, they don't necessarily eat the mushrooms, they take pictures of them. I thought that was kind of interesting. You said, oh, you took home the enoki mushrooms, and it's like, I'm thinking, okay, you're going to consume them, but they made a great composition. They're just gorgeous. And I don't understand, but it looks gorgeous. Telephone pole. It's just fascinating. A myriad of textures and compositions. What's the story behind telephone pole?
Well, that was back in Kensington Market, of course, because I love shooting there.
Okay.
And because of the area, people are always posting bills on all the telephone poles. So I'm passing this pole, and all the papers had been ripped off it.
Ah,
And there were all of these staples and painted over in places still left from all of the hundreds and hundreds of posters that have been stapled on. And it just looked really interesting to me. So I took a very close up of it and made it an abstract piece.
I love it. I love it. Just for a moment, we're going to get serious with Hate Has No Home here. And I'm assuming this is another telephone pole from what I gather. What was this? Was it painted on? Was it a poster? It looks like there's tape over it. Very evocative and appropriate for this time.
I think I shot that about a year and a half ago. And that was again in Kensington Market. I do go other places. That's one of my favorites. And it was just a sign that somebody had put up.
Yes.
And I thought it was a lovely message. And so I shot it.
Beautiful. Perfect. We're going to switch to still photographs, the last couple of them. And I love Dragon. Is a Dragon in the Woods?
Mm-hmm.
That one. Now, this is very interesting because it looks like a dragon, but I suspect it's something else that you found, you came across. What's the story behind that, Mel?
This is related to that ice storm, if you can
Okay.
believe it. So I live across from this really big park. And when the ice storm hit, there were, as I mentioned earlier, there were trees down everywhere. So when the maintenance crew was working their way, cleaning up all the fallen trees from the trails, one of the guys, as a joke, had carved up this tree that they cut off and realized that it had the shape that he could play with. And he took his chainsaw and he just cut into the wood and made this sort of like animal dragon-y type face.
Yes.
And it's still there to this day. It's been repainted several times. So originally it wasn't painted because he just had his chainsaw. And then as people walked by, once in a while, somebody would come and the first person painted it. I think that's one of the earliest versions of the painted dragon.
Okay.
And they stuck a piece of dead sod on top for a hat. It's wearing a blue hat right now. I still go walk by it just about every day.
Oh,
So the look has changed from year to year, and the hats change every season or two. And it was just such a wonderful shot. And it's a collective piece of art. It's in the middle of the woods.
absolutely. I love it. And finally, the photograph beside it, Wednesday 0893 Israel. I can't tell what those are, which in itself makes the whole thing fascinating. What's the deal? What's the story behind that?
That's back in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And we were looking at they recreated a deserted, abandoned Roman village.
Oh.
And so they had just this display of pottery. And the light was lovely and the pottery was beautiful. And I just liked the look and again went close up to make it a little obtuse. And just, I love the light on those pots. So
I
took
do
a few.
too. It's fantastic. We're going to wrap up now, Mel. I'm just wondering if people want to see more of your photographs or get in touch with you for whatever reasons, how can they?
Well, I may need your help still
Okay.
because I am trying to set up a website
Okay.
and I'm not very good at it. So I'm going to, I have actually taken out a domain, but it's not live yet,
Okay.
Noodelman-Photos.com.
Excellent.
And
Okay.
so hopefully by the time you finished preparing this and putting it together, I hope to have something up and published and available for people to go to. And
Very cool.
you know how to spell Noodelman, and it's just one word, Noodelmanphotos.com.
Absolutely. Noodelman,
Yeah.
one word. Photographs?
No, photos.
Photos.com, Noodelmanphotos.com. Is that all one word?
Yeah.
Excellent. And I'm assuming triple W. So yes, by the time this is up, which actually I'm very fast. By the end of the day, this will be ready. But if you
Oh, no,
want,
I won't be.
I'll take my time. I'll give it a few days, etc. A few days? No, I need months. Oh no.
Well,
But
I'm going to be on the phone with you immediately after, so
yeah.
you can help me. So I'll be able to get it ready for you.
Oh, sure. I can't wait. It's going to be gorgeous. And I can't thank you enough for coming on the show this day, Mel.
You're too kind, really. I mean, I'm just a hack, but I have fun with it. I enjoy it, and you're very, very kind in your compliments.
Well, you're very, very good and you're appreciated. I wanted you to know that, Mel. And I'm sure once more people get a look at your work, they'll go, holy cow. They'll, whether it's a skilled artist with a good eye or whether it's what I call a lay person, just a regular person, there's something for everybody and everyone will enjoy your work.
Well, I hope so. And you're very kind to have me on.
Well, it's true. And I want to thank all of you out there for joining us this day on Magical People. We'll see you all really soon.